Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Silver Lyming. I'm your host, Anne Desjardins, and I love coming here to share these stories with you about people who have gone through Lyme disease and tick-borne illness and come out on the other end in a much better place, even though it might have gotten really ugly in the middle. And I just want to let others know more about Lyme disease, kind of what it looks like, what different people have experienced, because no two stories are really ever the same. And there are overarching themes that are the same, but ultimately each individual is affected differently with symptoms, how it came to be. And that makes it a little bit more challenging for doctors to diagnose accurately. So I think by sharing a portrayal of a lot of different people's versions of what happened to them, it's very helpful to hopefully educate you, the listener. But also, most importantly, what I want to do is just spread hope, let you know that it is possible to get well again. And now my guest today is Sam Perry. I'm very excited to have her here. And I told her before in somewhat of an emotional state that I just really was grateful for her, because I came across her and her mom at an event that they put together for Sam Spoons, which is an organization her mom, Carrie, put together to help to fund people's journeys with Lyme and tick-borne illness and treatment, because it's really expensive. And she learned that firsthand, helping to support Sam get well through her journey. But that event was something that I came to be at the very beginning of getting better. And it inspired me so, and it gave me hope, and it let me know that I could get better too. And it was so important to me to hear stories like that. And so again, that's partially why I do this podcast, is to help to share those stories. But it's really fun for me to have Sam here today, just because, again, she touched me personally in one of the best ways possible in my life. And I'm so grateful. And it is truly an honor to have her here. She's living her life to the fullest. You can see her on social media. It's so beautiful. And I have a chance right now. She's at home on break, and I'll let her share exactly what she's up to, but it's just so cool. And it's so amazing to see her in a space of health and wellness again, and to have her share her story. So without further ado, Sam, if you don't mind, please, can you share with us a little bit more about who you are, how you became involved with Lyme and tick-borne illness, and then, some different things that you experienced maybe as some symptoms early on, and really how it turned then for you into where you are now, please.
Sure. Thanks, Anne, for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I unfortunately became very familiar with Lyme disease, but now I say that it's very fortunately, because it's changed my life for the better. So when I was around 15, I started to get sick. And from the first bout of symptoms, I had basically a week of flu-like symptoms. It wasn't abnormal. I was going to high school. Everyone gets sick. So I stayed home from school for a week with a high fever, and thought nothing of it. Didn't get tested positive for any flu or anything. Just got better. And then I was just about to turn 16. And for the next 6 months, I went from a super active teenager. I ran track. I played competitive soccer. I was going to play in college. And I kept getting mysteriously sicker with little symptoms. So I had Lyme when I was a teenager, and I'm now 25, and I'm luckily in remission. But back to my story, I, for 6 months, was getting more tired, getting fatigue. I was taking naps after school, which I never did. I was like bouncing off the walls as a kid with energy, was getting swollen and painful joints, and those random symptoms that everyone with Lyme understands. You get dizziness, you get nausea, you get this weird tingling, you get that weird sensation. And so I couldn't explain what I was feeling sometimes, but I knew I wasn't feeling well. And I went through, I think it was like 7 or 8 other doctors. My mom's the bookkeeper of all of the actual facts of the disease, because of course my brain was pretty foggy as well. For sure. But I was diagnosed with a couple of things, like they thought I had rheumatoid arthritis. One doctor said I had an eating disorder. I got a couple, it's all in your head. You just have anxiety. You're overworking yourself. Those types of diagnoses. And finally, a family friend had suggested Lyme disease. And we had never heard of it. So we got a test, and the Western blot came back negative. And I was on doxycycline for a little bit. I was running track and I was in the sun all the time. And I hated the way it made my skin feel like it was melting off. So went off of it, kept looking for the answers. And finally, 6 months, almost to the day after, we did a more extensive Lyme test because my mom was still, it was in the back of her mind. And it turned positive for 2 or 3 strains of Lyme. And I also was then diagnosed with Babesia clinically. So from there, I thought, amazing, I have a diagnosis. This is great. I'm going to get better like that. We do antibiotics. Perfect. That wasn't so much the case. It took about 1.5 years of 3,000 milligrams, at least, of antibiotics a day for me to realize I was so much sicker. I was getting 1 step better and then 2 steps sicker. And at that time, when you're a teenager, everything is changing in life. And I thought, well, maybe this is just part of growing up. You just start feeling like you're in pain and you just get tired. I don't know. And I was also getting feedback from doctors of like, it's not that bad, or it's in your head, or you're training too hard. And to be honest, if it weren't for my mom, I would have not listened to my inner voice as much as I did. And she always believed me. She always fought for me. And she knew, even when I didn't, that there was something that needed to be addressed, that I was not myself and that something could be done. So after that, so I was 18 at the time, and I had done a semester of school at Penn State. And I was basically, my mentality at that point was, I'm not that sick. I'm going to be fine. I'm just going to keep pushing through. Well, that did not last that long until I ran myself into the ground. And while I was away, I could be a bit more secretive about how terrible I was feeling. But when I came home that winter break, I was sleeping over 16 hours a day. I could barely do anything. And my mom was like, what's going on? We need to fix this. You're not going back to school. And I protested a little bit, didn't have that much energy to protest. So I was like, you're right. I can't live like this. We're going to get me well. So it was that turning point when we went holistic. It was either jumping off the cliff to pick line antibiotics or jumping off the cliff to experimental therapies. And I'm glad we chose the experimental therapies alternative route, Cliff, because that's what helped me get unstuck. And now I know people have been sick for 15, 20 plus years. And so I always say I'm super grateful that I had the inner voice and the outer voice of my mom to really push to get me better, because 3.5 years isn't as long as some people suffer. But anyway, everyone has their own journey. And so I went off antibiotics at that point. I did an elimination diet. I had started seeing a chiropractor because I was getting this swelling in my lower back. And of course, I was in all types of joint pain. I remember I had this little symptom journal that I started to write in, and I would rate how good my day was. I would write a couple of my symptoms, and there were little quotes in there. And I'm home at my parents' house for the holidays, and I picked it up as I do once a year when I come home. And some of the lines were like, I feel like a zombie. I can feel every single articulation in my spine. Everything hurts. I can't even lay still anymore. I had to buy a shower chair because I couldn't stand up long enough to be in the shower at one point. And now I can't even imagine being that sick, but it happened. And anyway, I kept trying these other therapies. I did some herbal tinctures, supplements. Eventually I did the autoimmune paleo diet to remove food inflammation from food, because my body was in such an inflammatory response that it was reacting to everything. And so I went on very strict diet. And then I tried hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is the thing that got me unstuck. It's not a cure. You don't feel better immediately. It took, honestly. So I did it. I did 8 weeks every weekday. I drove about 45 minutes away for this 1.5-hour session and would come back. So it was a full-time job for my mom taking me every day, and then friends and family that would help take me every day until I had the decreased brain fog to drive myself. So I'm really grateful for that support system. And that HBOT, the therapy got me unstuck after about a month, I started to feel these little glimmers of improvement. And it wasn't the improvement that would happen in one day and then go away the next. It was like, oh my God, I can walk the dog again. Oh, I can go to the grocery store and not feel absolutely wrecked afterwards. And it were these little glimmers that started to keep this ball rolling forward. So after those 2 months of HBOT, I had been under chiropractic care, supplements. I also did infrared sauna and PMF, pulse electromagnetic therapy, not as well with the HBOT. And that concoction of therapies helped get that ball rolling to health. And it took another 6 months to a year to feel good enough. I went back to school the next fall and I ended up finishing my degree at Penn State. I double majored by accident.
Wow.
Because I was so interested in Spanish as well. I was studying pre-med because then I was so excited. I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to heal all the Lyme patients. And I also wanted to study abroad. So I did that. And I ended up majoring in biology and Spanish and graduating in 2020. And I definitely still dealt with things. It's not a linear process to healing, but somewhere along the way, I lost my identity as the Lyme girl. And I found health. And I don't know if I can pinpoint one point that I found that. It's honestly looking back, I realized that I've achieved that, which is honestly one of the greatest achievements of my life, to be healthy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a bit about my sickness journey to health.
Man, that's fantastic. And I'm really glad that you were obviously able to get well again. Like I feel bad when it's such young people that it's like disruptive of one of the like funnest times of your life, but also glad that you were able to have support and to get back to it. And like almost kind of, it's not that you've found like obviously had purpose, but it kind of just like helped hone you in onto the exact purpose of really what your journey is maybe meant to be. Right. And sometimes that's what I think about with this is like, I was kind of struggling for a purpose myself. And I was literally asking like, okay, what purpose should I do? And then I got diagnosed literally the next day with Lyme. Right. And I was like, oh,
here it is.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so it's really redirected me and my energy and purpose to a whole different space than what I was really picturing my life to look like. And I kind of feel in a sense, maybe that's why this has happened to you and to a lot of us. And it's not that you were maybe asking those questions yourself, but that's what universe had in mind for you. And so this just, again, helps to shape you into your future state. So speaking about that, can you share with us a little bit more about what you are doing now specifically and maybe how this has impacted what future state will look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. So right now I'm actually going to chiropractic school in Spain. It's super fun. And I really like living in a different country and experiencing different culture. I took 2 years off after college to really evaluate what I wanted to do with my career within health. Because I knew I wanted to help people in their healing journeys, but I realized I didn't want to do that in the traditional medicine way. And I really value my lifestyle. I think that's really come from having Lyme too. I just won't take a low quality of life in the way that I can't live my fullest, healthiest self. So I don't want to be personally, I don't want to be working in a hospital. I don't want to be surrounded by sickness anymore. I really want to be an advocate for health. So that's when I changed gears from traditional medicine to chiropractic. So I'm about a year and a half into my chiropractic school. And I chose Spain because I loved my study abroad experience there. And I really just loved it. Yeah, while I'm free and I have this joyous health, I can have these unique experiences. And it's been really a joy to do it a bit differently in Spain.
Yeah. And I would imagine that'll obviously paint a bit of a different color into the whole thing for you, just being in a different space and having that opportunity. I think it's going to lend well to what you're planning to do. Can you so you were saying like you kind of had the choice to go with PICC line antibiotics or you had a choice to go more with the holistic route. And so I'm just thinking about, really more the direction that you're going to go is more akin to that. Why, what made you decide that? Like, was there something monumental that happened that you were like, oh, I should go this route? Or was that just more of like an inner choice that kind of led you in that direction?
I think, I mean, ultimately, I was so sick that my parents really made that decision for me. Of course, I was involved in the conversation, but I was so desperate. I was like, I'll do anything. I just want to be well. And thinking back, to me, having a PICC line of antibiotics felt so dramatic for a 18-year-old. I was like, I'm not that sick. There's no way. Like that's absurd. And so we went the alternative route because we also really trusted doctors at Turnpaul. I saw Dr. Shannon Smith. I saw Dr. Regina Smith for a little bit. And of course, Dr. Turnpaul. And they were saying, hey, we have HBOT. We recommend this. We're not sure, but we think it's probably the better option. So with their guidance, and of course, my mom's, whatever my mom thought, she's a warrior for me. And it wasn't any big pivotal moment. It was like, okay, we're going to try this one more alternative therapy. And then if that fails, we can do the PICC line. But I'm very glad that we chose the holistic route and that it worked. It really did.
Yeah, well, clearly, like, look at you, like you're in such a better place. And I'm, again, just so thankful that you've gotten to the place now where you can see this again so differently and help so many other people through your studies with what you're doing in chiropractic, knowing that holistic options do exist and that that's something that we can educate people about, because I think that's something that sometimes gets missed too. It's like, oh, we've got to go this traditional Western way. And you and I are both examples of people who went in different directions than that after trying with the Western stuff for a while. And that's just very exciting again for what's going to happen to you in your career coming forward.
Thanks. And the healing journey, it wasn't that HBOT cured me. Like I said, it was like it started the ball rolling towards health. And I realized like I really changed my lifestyle, and it's something I'll never go back to. Not that I was living a super crazy, terrible lifestyle as a teenager, but I value so many small healthy lifestyle habits. And once I started getting well, I found yoga because I could no longer run and play soccer. So someone suggested that yoga, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And it's a huge part of my life now. And food is an ongoing love now because I feed myself to fuel my body and nourish. And so I think about that in a different way. I think about stress management in a different way and choosing what I'm going to do with my whole life, knowing that that's always subject to change, but in my daily habits, what can I do to promote health? And I know that I'm not immune to getting sick ever again. It could happen. And that's a big fear. That was one of the last things that I'm still working on from being sick, honestly, is the, when I get a small illness, oh my gosh, am I going to be sick for another 3 years? But if I can put my body in the best state that it can to combat those things, then that's all I can do. So it just changed my whole vision. And I'm hoping that whatever I do in my career, that it kind of steers that way as well.
I don't see how it couldn't. It's I think very innate and hardwired in you in a sense. Like you've learned it, you've walked it, you've lived it. And so you really have integrated it fully, right? Like I don't think that's something that you could probably put off as much as we try. Once you kind of get transformed, like you really can't go back because you just understand it. You get the efficiency of it. You get the purpose of it. Like it just helps your body to be more optimal and function better. And I look at having Lyme and tick-borne illness almost as like a lifetime accountability coach, right? Okay. And we know what happens if we go back to the other direction. So that also just kind of helps us to push forward in this state. You've learned it at such a more young age than some people do. I mean, you're like 20 years ahead of me. And that'll set you up a lot better for a more smooth life, a ride through life as well, just because you're going to be that much more grounded and rooted in some very, I think, beneficial core beliefs that will help you, again, just to have better health the rest of your life. I'm grateful that you're that open and saying that you still have a little bit of fears potentially. Like we're humans. And that's something that I think we all who have been chronically sick for a long time combat. Like, how do you really let go of that? Every little twitch, every little whatever. And I think it's just, again, practicing managing our central nervous system and just continually doing different tools and support to slow us down and regulate to come back to a normal function. That is something I could ask you to talk a little bit more about too. When you were coming back into a state of health, or now that you're fully healthy, do you ever struggle with, like, I know this might sound weird, but like transitioning from being sick to healthy, was that something that was hard for you to shift with that energy adjustment?
Yeah, honestly, because I got kind of used to being sick, and at first I kind of ran. Like I got well, and then I went off to college, and I didn't want to be the sick girl anymore because kind of in my hometown, of course, my mom's really vocal and she's doing absolutely amazing things, but I was known as Sam with Lyme disease, and so I ran. And then even after I graduated, I moved to Costa Rica for 2 years, and nobody knew that part of me unless I had shared that with them. So I was no longer the sick girl. And also now in Spain, I mean, people know that's my motivation to study chiropractic, but they know me so much more. And so I transitioned pretty harshly externally, I think, changed my environment, and I was no longer Sam with Lyme, but internally it took definitely longer to trust my body again. Like I said, when I get a little cold or a sore throat or something, or aches and pains, it's like, oh my God, can my body handle this? Will I be sick again? Is this the beginning of some other mystery chronic disease? So it's an ongoing process. Like you said, we're humans, and it's not like I get healthy like that. There's one day that I'm like declared cured or in remission or healthy. It's a process to healing as well. So it's something I still deal with, to be honest. And each time it happens, each time I get sick and I get well, it's adding to the evidence that my body is healthy and strong. So the more that happens, I'm hoping that journey just continues. But I also know that's not linear.
It's definitely not linear. It's definitely much more of like a zigzaggy, sometimes twisty, bobby turny line, as I said many times, because I think people want it obviously to be a very linear process, but it's definitely not. And we can certainly take steps back. And I like how you're looking at it in that each time it happens, it just strengthens your muscle, basically, is what I'll look at it as, is like you're strengthening your muscles to let yourself know that you can trust yourself and that you're going to get through it and you're going to be okay. And it's not going to be another 3.5 to 4 years of getting better. And the other thing I think about with that, Sam, is like, we have so many more tools now. Like where you were then, you did not know this much of what you've accumulated now. So you could help yourself that much faster too. And that's something that I try to take. Like, I'm like, okay, and if this happens again, you're going to know. And then you're going to be able to do this, and you're going to have, but of course you can sometimes spiral and be like, but what if? But yeah, it's like, I know what to do now. I can do this. I've done it before. My body remembers how to do this. I've just got to like pick myself up and keep moving. And I think you guys ride horses, like get back up on the horse and like keep going and, do it again. Or is it your sister, I think, rides horses?
Yeah, she's better at it. She's the pro. Yeah, but having Lyme at such a young age did suck. And it was a pivotal age that I was forming my ideas about the world and connections. And I was supposed to be just living my best life in college and learning. And I had a different journey. And I'm so grateful for it now. Because like you said, I have all these tools that I didn't even mean to acquire. And most importantly, I know myself so much better. I think that was a huge part in the healing journey of knowing and trusting my body. Knowing what is definitely not right, knowing what's maybe a trick of my mind. And that is an ongoing process, but that's super important in this journey, especially with chronic illness, to really know yourself and know your body and your physiology really well.
Yes. And you're the only one that's driving it. And so you know it the best, and it yells very loudly when there's problems, and you've just got to learn to tune in and listen and hear it and do something about it. And it is one of the best gifts. Like you do know your body incredibly well then. Like you've felt everything and you're like, okay, nope, I know exactly what that is. I know, yep, no. But then it's just fine tuning to be able to acknowledge that that's just a little bit of my body doing whatever, and it's going to be fine and come right back to it, you know?
Yeah, it's adapting. It's
Yeah.
working. It's a
Yes.
good sign.
Yeah. Yeah. I also was thinking about earlier when you had talked about that you hardly remember maybe how sick you were, but you know you were that sick. Like I've had the thought that sometimes in the same lifetime we live past lives, like we have past lives in the same body, and that's kind of how I liken it to. Is like I hardly remember how sick I was, but maybe that's just also more evidence of like how much we've healed, because we can't even feel that in our, like, I can't even really feel that in my body anymore. If I even sit and really think about like the fatigue that I experienced when I was so sick, like I can remember it, but I can't feel it in my body anymore. And it's almost like that version died. And that was like a different iteration of who I am. And I kind of like that too. It's more like segmented reality, maybe a little bit too. Like,
That's such a cool way to think of it. Like, and that's so true because I can't imagine. I feel so good in my body, not perfect, but so good in my body that, yeah, I can't imagine. And I don't really accept anything less. If I do something and I feel a little worse, it's like, okay, how can I feel better again? So I can't imagine feeling how sick I was. And it's not until I read those things or I ask people who are there as well. Yeah, you really went through it. And maybe it's part of the brain that blocks it out because it was such a traumatic experience. So it's protecting me from feeling those things again. But gosh, I just feel so lucky to have that concept of, I don't even know how that feels like anymore. If you told 18-year-old Sam that, she would be like, no, this is forever. This is how I'm going to live. This is how I'm going to die. That's it. So it's been a good reflection of the long journey.
yes, yes. And just again, proof that it's possible to get better. And that's really, again, one of the main takeaways for people is just like, you can get better from this. You just said it. Like you thought at 18, like this was it and I'm never getting better again. And here you are 7, 6, how 20,
7 years later.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years. It's like, here you are. And like, you're in a completely different state of being. Like, again, you're not even that same person practically. And so a lot, I mean, it takes some effort sometimes and it takes some time, but what else do we really have? So I would rather spend my time working towards fixing than spend my time kind of waiting or like maybe wallowing or whatever. Like the time's going to pass either way. And so you may as well put your efforts at trying to fix yourself instead of just accepting the status quo, you know?
Yeah. And I remember in one of my hardest times, my doctor at the time, Dr. Shannon Smith, he would say to me every time, this is not your forever. And of course I was like, whatever. But it stuck with me. And it's such a simple phrase, but it's not your forever. Change is the only constant. And he was so right. It was not my forever. It wasn't even close. And now I can look back at that and feel the truth of those words. But to anyone going through that, like, it's not your forever. And I was telling you, Anne, that I've inspired people without even knowing. And it's such a humbling experience to know that I've inspired people just by doing what I felt like I had to do. I mean, to be honest, I didn't get well so that I could inspire other people. I got well because I needed to, and it was all for me and my family, but the people that were trying to help me too. It's like, gosh, these people are investing in me. Even if I don't feel like I have the energy to invest in me, they are helping me. So I'm going to do it too. I'm going to fight with them. And now, even since I've been in remission for 7 years, and like I said, I kind of ran from it. Looking back to see how many people I've inspired is so humbling, and it makes it worth it. The health and the that I can make that health multiply to other people makes it so worth it. And so if you're going through it too, you don't know how many people you're inspiring by just continuing to move forward.
Yes. And it's just the words find the right people. Again, like you gave me evidence that it's possible. And it was like, oh, I'm going to set my sights on that energy and follow that energy because that's where I need to go. I don't want to be stuck sick. I don't want to be forever thinking that this is my forever. Like it's not your forever. And you have different options and different choices. And that's what people need to really get is like, you can choose to stay sick or you can choose to get better. And, you know, again, time's going to go by either way. And so I would rather align with people like you who chose to get better than choose to stay sick. And sometimes maybe that's hard for people to hear, like, well, I'm not choosing to stay sick, but really sit down with yourself and think about what sick is doing for you, what sick is serving you if you're not getting well. Like, is there something that potentially could you feel like you're gaining by remaining sick if it's just never going away?
I love that you said that, because it's hard to tell sick people that just to be motivated to get better. I mean, if I would have heard that, I would have said some mean words. But what helped me get better too was that motivation. I mean, it was when I started to see those glimmers, like, oh, I want to be well, and taking responsibility for your health, even though it's not your fault that you got sick. It's never your fault that you get sick, but you can still take responsibility for your health. And that will help the healing journey so much. Like it's one of the biggest things. And it's hard to talk about, because I don't want to sit here, because I am healthy. I'm fortunate enough to be healthy, and just tell you that you just need to just motivate yourself to be healthy, and that's it. But it's a huge part of the mindset. Like I said, it's not your fault that you got sick, but it's your responsibility to work towards your health.
I like how you put that, because I'm a big believer. I listen to Brene Brown, and everybody's doing their best, right? Everybody is always doing their best. It's not your fault that you got sick. Like, I'm looking at it from my lens of like, well, I was in a really bad place in life for a good amount of time. And so I think consequently I got sick. But like, it wasn't my fault. I was doing the best that I could. It's just something that happened. But what would have been my fault is if I had chosen to just do nothing and to just accept that and stay there. I don't think I'd still be alive, actually, if I had done that option, just because I felt so unwell. But like, it is our responsibility to do something about it. It's not necessarily the things that happen to us, it's how we react to them that matter most. And so I like how you're putting that, is that it's your responsibility to see it and take action towards fixing the problem.
Yeah, for sure. I love that we talked about that. Yeah.
And it is hard for people to hear, because I can picture people in my head that are very actively trying to get better. And that's why I kind of hint more at like the underlying emotional connections of potentially what sickness might be serving them. I read a lot of and listen to Louise Hay, and she often will discuss that too. It's like, is there something that you're getting out of being sick? Like, what is really there to be had? Like, people taking care of you then are, you're all attention on you. You don't have to work. You don't have to, like, is there something underlying there? And it might be a nasty thing to think about. Like, it's kind of maybe, again, harsh to some people, but I think there's some legitimacy to that. And we just really have to sit with ourselves and look deep inside. I think that's a lot of this too, is sitting with self. And like you had said, just learning yourself really well and listening and acting on what that inner voice is saying to you.
Yeah, it's so worth examining. And I say yoga was a huge part of my healing, not in the physical postures. And if you know more about yoga, you know that's 1/8 of a classic way of yoga practice. It's a lot of self-reflection and deeper planes than just the physical. And so when I was able to connect with those emotional, spiritual sides of myself and realize that there was sickness on those levels as well, I could heal the whole body being, the whole being, rather than just focusing on the physical, because I don't believe a sickness is ever just physical, and you can't treat it from one singular angle. And so that also really helped my journey towards wellness is the practice and the philosophy of yoga, which anyone can find through so many different ways of self-discovery. That was just the one that I found, but it's definitely worth examining.
Yes. And I will second that, in that I practice hot yoga. I do Bikram 26 and 2. And that I attribute to saving a lot of my life, like doing the postures, the moving meditation, connection with body, connection with self, a lot of the different tentacles then outstretched. Like, I'm working on becoming an Ayurvedic practitioner, but that whole lifestyle has really influenced me as well. And just allowing my being to be healthier on every level, body, mind, and soul. And it's been a beautiful journey to look back and see. It, again, was very painful and sucky in the middle, but coming out and looking at it more from the levels that I feel we're both looking at it is much, much greater serving because we're able to heal from so many different angles. It's not just a physical dis-ease, it's dis-ease of the soul. That's
Yeah.
why this happens to us. And we really have to examine things from more than one lens to get to root cause and suss out why this is actually occurring. And I think about us, though, we're like grown-ups. I mean, a little bit further along on that grown-up scale than you are. But like, I think about kids, how does that really pertain to them and how they're so little yet? Like, I guess their souls just evolve much more rapidly, much sooner in life, and they probably mature quicker than they should in a sense, going through chronic illness. But
yeah, I can go through some rabbit holes and really it twists the mind because yeah, you're thinking of a child, like what could they have ever done to deserve that if it's karmic or what is the lesson here? But everyone has their own journey. And someone asked me the other day how old I feel. And I was like, physically, I feel young. I feel like I have so much energy I can take on the world. I have this like newfound health. It's to be dramatic, like I was born again physically. But in my soul, I feel a lot older. And so, yeah, maybe these kids have souls that have gone through more lives I don't want to go down that rabbit hole really, but it's sad when you see kids struggling from Lyme, but I always have to trust that it's a journey and everyone has their own journey. And maybe they're learning a tough thing is happening to them that's going to make them so much better off in the future. You never know. So yes. I try to have hope with that.
Yes. 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 I remember seeing a very small child in the office I went to get treatment from. And it just broke my heart because like I know as a grown up, and again, I also think about that as like, I have the words to say what I was feeling and I still got told I was full of it and it was too much stress. And it was like, it's not, is there something legitimately wrong with me? I'm not depressed. I'm becoming depressed because I don't feel well. It's not the other way around, and like, but how does a kid articulate that well? And like, we just have to keep doing the type of things like this to just talk about it, help people understand again a little bit more about what this is, what it looks like, and let them know that you can get better. I'm glad that you had good support. I think sometimes maybe that's missing for some grown-ups. So I'm glad that you were still kind of like at a young age and that, you're still living with your parents and you had somebody there to kind of keep championing you and pushing you to go, because it's not the easiest thing to motivate yourself through. And so I think with kids, at least, like hopefully they're in a good, healthy home environment that they've got support and can be, made well again too.
Yeah, my gosh, I would probably still be sick, definitely still be sick if it weren't for my mother bear, like full bear mode. And the other, I have 4 sisters and a big loving family that was my support system. And of course I lost some friends that didn't understand, and that's okay. But I do feel like I was so lucky, so fortunate to have a support system, because I know that many, many Lyme patients feel very alone. And I felt alone with support system. And I just can't imagine what other people are going through that don't have a strong support system to keep them going, when I believed the doctor said it was in my head, but my mom knew that was not true. So, yeah, I wish everyone had the support, and I'm glad that things like this are happening more, that the word is getting out and people understand a little bit more. And that Lyme patients can connect to each other too, because that's not something I ever did. And that is a big reason why I felt alone in that journey. But when you can connect with someone and they know what you're going through, and then hopefully you can motivate each other together. Like, hey, we want to be healthy. We're understanding each other's situations and we want to motivate each other to get better. So that's something that I'm hoping that's coming out of these Lyme communities and what you're sharing. So it's really amazing that that's happening.
Yeah, thanks. It again, it's like you inspired me, and it's like now I'm like, it's so good to share these stories and hopefully inspire others. And if you're interested, the episode I did with your mom, for those who are listening, is episode 20. And so if you want to listen to a different perspective of Sam's story, you can certainly check that episode out as well. It was a fun one to do with your mom, and I love her energy, and she is a really good mama bear.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun to talk with her and then to hear your perspective a little bit more too. Um, I'm kind of curious. You talked about some of the support that you had. Uh, for you, like, were you able to have normal friendship relationships as well? What did that look like for you at that age in your life? Were your friends understanding of what was happening to you? Was that something that people just sort of abandoned you through?
It was really varied. So I have a couple friends that with me through it. And even though they didn't understand, they would check in and they would care and they would just show they cared in the way that they could. And those friends I still have to this day. And I am incredibly grateful for them. And I tell them when I can, because even when I'm healthy, like I wouldn't be here without them. But I did lose a lot of friends. I mean, I was super involved in a bunch of things in high school. So I had a big friend network. But it showed me who, not that the other people didn't care, maybe they just didn't understand. And at that age, when we go to college, we kind of diverge our lives anyway. But, at college too, I said, I was of the mindset of, I'm not sick. I'm fine. I'm going to get better. So I kind of hid it. And that's probably another reason why people didn't understand, because I didn't let that be seen. I didn't let myself be understood. And so I lost friends because they didn't understand. And I lost friends. Well, I have one of my best friends who's been my best friend since we were 5. And I was really upset when I was going through this because she was falling off like the rest, like a lot of other friends. And I really had this talk with her because I was like, I thought you would be one to really support me. And I'm really hurt that I'm not getting that support. And we had this amazing talk because she's like, I just don't understand. And it hurts me that you're hurting. And I don't know what to do about it. And so I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to remind you that you're sick and I don't know what to do. So I just don't say anything. And that was so pivotal in our friendship because I realized she cared. She just didn't know how to show it. And she didn't want to say anything to remind me that I was sick. Not that I needed a reminder.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Those friendships morphed. And that friendship became stronger after that conversation. And the friends that somehow knew what to do also became stronger. And the friends that I let go of, that's okay. It happens. And it showed me who was really there for me. And then I can be there for them, and showed me who isn't. And that's totally fine.
Yes. Yes. It's a good, healthy way of looking at it.
Now I think of it that way. Of course, I was upset in the moment. Hindsight's 2020.
Yes. Yes. And we always have who we need. God sends us who we need in our journeys and takes away those that we do not. And it's okay. But I also kind of brought that up because I just want people listening. Again, if you know somebody with Lyme and you don't quite maybe understand what's going on with them, or you don't really know what their story is, I think this is kind of a good thing to bring up, in that just ask them, talk to them. How can you help? What do you need? What is this like? And again, listen to some of these other stories and you can hear a lot of what this is like for people to experience. And it's not that fun because a lot of us get relegated to zombies. That's what I felt like. I felt like a zombie. You mentioned that word specifically. I was like, I just felt like a shell of a human. I wasn't really alive. My brain didn't work. It was really challenging to communicate with people. I was scared because they kept telling me there's nothing wrong with me. And so I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want people to see me in that vulnerable state. I stuttered. Yeah. Like I couldn't even remember people's names that I knew my whole life. There was a lot.
It's hard to nurture friendships in that mode, for sure.
Yeah. And it's hard to tell people because, again, you've got all these issues, but doctors tell you that there's nothing wrong. So nobody's corroborating. So you just feel like a nutball because you're like, okay, I know that something deep down inside of me is very drastically wrong. And I'm dying. That's at least what I was feeling. Like, I'm literally dying. I know I'm going to die any minute and nobody believes me. Something must really systemically be wrong. Like deep down inside, God just wired me weird and I'm going to die. But like, how do you tell people that?
Yeah. Not the easiest thing.
No. And again, like I start to ask people and they're like, well, you look fine.
Oh yeah. That's another big thing with this chronic illness. And yeah, I was 18 and my mom knew I was sick. You could see it in my eyes. I can see it in photos. I knew I was sick. My light was not on. But to the normal person, I didn't look sick. And I had a handicap pass at one point, actually. And I remember parking in a handicapped spot, and I got out to go to the grocery store, and I got this dirty, dirty look from this guy. And it hurt so bad because I wanted to just explain myself. And I'm like, I'm not taking this from someone who needs it. I really do need it. And I wish I didn't. So that's another thing. You never know what someone else is going through, and they could look sick. They're using all of their energy of the day, of the week, even maybe, to paint on that face that they're okay. And so, yeah, that is a huge thing to learn from that experience, that you never know what someone else is going through. And you can never say, oh, you look well, because that's not a reflection on how they feel.
Correct. And I, as a human, remind myself about this many times, like through life, and it's like, why is that? And it's like, don't just like, or somebody's driving in front of me and I'm like, like, listen, you don't know what they're doing, like they might be doing their best to just keep their car on the road right now. Cause there were a lot of times that I was in that space and I wasn't drunk. I had a hard time functioning normally. And so it's a very good reminder. And I'm sorry that you were put to the point of even having to do that. And it's sucky that we have to feel like we have to explain ourselves when we look fine, like we're not missing a leg or something. And it's like, I know I look very able-bodied, but inside I'm fighting the biggest war of my entire life. Yeah. And I really think it's knock on wood for both of us. May it be the hardest thing that either of us ever have to do ever. Is to get ourselves well from that and go through that and have that experience. And again, I just think about people at that age. It's the time that you're supposed to be having fun and doing all the cool things and
stupid things.
Yeah. Well, maybe you got saved from that. How about that?
Maybe I did.
You got saved just from the stupid things that people do generally in that age range. And you come out and you're like super smart and focused and grounded and know what needs to happen in your life. And that's great. Yeah. I mean, that's one way to do it.
Sometimes it feels like a curse, but it's the way I need to live my life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I don't recommend people run out and find a tick to bite them just so that they can have that bypass of the stupid experiences. There's other ways to do that too. But
yes, many other ways
that are much more helpful and a lot more fun, I would imagine. And so maybe that's kind of where we could end this, is that if you wouldn't mind, if you had one thing to say, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be one thing, but what would be the best thing that's happened to you as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness?
Oof. I'd say I have this drive to live my life to the fullest, and I don't know when it will wear off. I hope it never does, but I want to live my life to the fullest and do all the experiences that my heart desires. I want to inspire as many people as I can and acquire knowledge so I can use these gifts that I feel like now I've given from this experience to help other people. And I also know that healing is, I'm personally not going to heal anybody. It's that person that will heal. I want to facilitate that. And so this drive to be that best person I can be, to live life to the fullest and inspire people, like that's the greatest gift that I could have received. And it feels overwhelming sometimes. And then sometimes that light's a little bit more dim and it needs to be fired up again. But it's really special and it drives me every day, which I'm really grateful for.
That's fantastic. And you can see it again, if you want to follow Sam on social media, she's there. She has beautiful stories all the time doing yoga or some fantastic place, skiing here, there. Like she really is truly living her life to the fullest. And it's a fantastic thing to watch because it is inspiring incredibly. It's like, not only do I want to just be healthy, but like, I want to go do some of that stuff too. Like you're really just like super inspiring for people. And I love it. And so if you have questions directly for Sam out of this conversation, you're more than welcome. I did ask her about this. You can reach out to her on social media, but I would invite you again just to follow her because she is very inspiring. If you think about where she came from to where she is now, where she's going, what she's doing with her life as a result of her exposure to a tick and Lyme and tick-borne illness, and really what it's done to shape where she's going. I'm so excited to watch and follow along and just see where you go. And I really appreciate your time here and sharing this with people because it is going to be inspiring. My plan is going to be millions when I get this podcast really blown up. But
Yes.
right now we're currently in hundreds, probably maybe 1,000. That's really good. That's a lot of people. And you have touched so many people over your time with this. And I'm sorry that you had to experience it, but I am glad for you that you're choosing to look at it as tackling fuel to better yourself, to help others, and to just find more joyful purpose in life.
Thank you, Anne. I really appreciate being a part of this. You're doing amazing things, and it's going to be more far reaching than you think. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's listened.
Yes, thank you. And good luck with your schooling. I will again be watching and rooting and cheering all the way for you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Take care.